Elara Villanueva had been a newlywed for only 9 days when she became the prime suspect in a double murder that shocked 2 countries and exposed a dark world of betrayal, manipulation, and hidden rage. Elara Villanueva thought she had married the love of her life, but when her husband Jovren Hale vanished with his secret mistress, the truth that followed pushed her into a nightmare no one saw coming. Jovren Hale looked like the perfect groom, but 9 days after the wedding, he and his mistress were found dead, leading investigators straight to Elara Villanueva, whose past revealed secrets darker than the crime itself. Elara Villanueva entered her marriage with hope, but 9 days later she was accused of planning one of the most chilling revenge killings ever committed by a newlywed bride. Jovren Hale made a vow he never intended to keep, and Elara Villanueva discovered the betrayal that turned a fairy tale wedding into a brutal true crime mystery that stunned everyone who knew them. Elara Villanueva was celebrated as a devoted Filipina bride, but when the bodies of Jovren Hale and Mira Quendell were discovered, investigators uncovered a timeline so precise it suggested the murders were never spontaneous. They were calculated. Mira Quendell thought she had won the man she desired, but 9 days after Jovren's wedding to Elara Villanueva, both were found murdered, sparking a gripping investigation into jealousy, deception, and planned destruction. Serena Malvera grew up surrounded by the calm rhythm of the ocean in a coastal Philippine town where almost everyone knew each other's routines. Her days were simple but steady, shaped by fishing seasons, market days, and the slow, predictable pace of provincial life. Many admired her ability to stay patient during hardships and her quiet strength when dealing with challenges. She was never loud, never impulsive, and never demanding. She lived in a world where small things mattered and loyalty was everything. That loyalty became the defining part of her identity, guiding every choice she made. When she met Dalton Brayson, her life shifted in ways she never expected. Dalton was an American businessman who visited the Philippines to expand one of his distribution ventures. He had a background in import operations and traveled between countries frequently. He met Serena while she was volunteering at a small community center that helped foreign visitors navigate local services. Dalton stood out immediately. He was confident, well-spoken, and carried an aura of stability that contrasted Serena's modest life. People often noticed how he seemed accustomed to getting what he wanted without effort. Dalton spent more time in the town than originally planned, using the community center's services to make local connections. Serena saw him often, always polite and neatly dressed. He asked questions about the town, local traditions, and cultural values. Serena, being one of the most patient volunteers, guided him through everything he needed to know. It wasn't long before Dalton began showing interest in Serena beyond the professional environment. Their relationship developed quickly but quietly. Dalton invited Serena to dinners, scenic drives, and occasional trips to nearby islands. He always paid for everything, describing it as appreciation for her kindness. Serena had never experienced someone who treated her with such attention and respect. To her, Dalton felt like the beginning of a life she thought she would never reach, a life filled with possibilities beyond the shores of her hometown. Within 6 months, Dalton proposed. He told her he wanted a future with her, a stable life away from the constant movement of business travel. Serena, who trusted easily and loved deeply, accepted. Her family celebrated the news with warm excitement, believing Serena had finally found someone who recognized her worth. She felt surrounded by hope, imagining a marriage built on honesty and shared dreams. The wedding was held at a quiet island resort, far from the noise of the city. The location was serene, chosen for its clear waters and soft sand. The ceremony was small but beautiful, filled with relatives, neighbors, and a few of Dalton's colleagues who had flown in. Serena walked down the aisle wearing a simple yet elegant gown, one her aunt had helped tailor. Her heart felt full, and she believed with complete certainty that Dalton was the right person. Dalton, standing near the shoreline, looked proud as she approached. To Serena, his expression reflected genuine affection and commitment. The vows they exchanged felt real. She believed every word. The photographer captured moments of laughter, gentle smiles, and soft glances between them. Everything looked perfect on the outside. But beneath the surface of Serena's joy, something felt off. Dalton's behavior had changed in subtle ways weeks before the wedding. He had begun taking frequent calls in private, stepping away and lowering his voice whenever she approached. He claimed they were business-related, assuring her he was handling new negotiations for his company. Serena trusted him, even when her instincts felt restless. After the ceremony, they stayed at a private villa Dalton rented for what he called a honeymoon break. The villa was designed for comfort, tucked between palm trees with a view of the ocean. Serena expected the first days of marriage to feel magical, full of shared dreams and long conversations. Instead, she noticed Dalton slipping into his office habits, early departures, late returns, vague explanations. On the second day, Dalton told Serena he needed to follow up on a shipment issue. She believed him, but when he returned, he carried no documents, no laptop, and showed no signs of dealing with business. On the third day, he left again and returned with the same emptiness. Serena brushed aside the confusion, hoping the unusual pattern would fade as soon as his work settled. But it didn't. One morning, Serena found a delicate bracelet tucked beneath Dalton's travel bag. It wasn't hers, and the design was unlike anything she owned. It had a distinctive charm, something ornamental and feminine, with an engraving she didn't recognize. Serena froze as she examined it. She tried to convince herself it belonged to a relative of Dalton's or was part of a surprise gift he planned. But the uneasy feeling in her stomach refused to leave. She placed the bracelet back without mentioning it. Her heart wanted to believe Dalton, but her intuition whispered louder each day. By the fifth day of marriage, Serena made a discovery that shattered her trust completely. While Dalton showered, she organized their luggage and found an airline receipt hidden inside a folder. It showed Dalton's name and another passenger, Lyria Calden. The date on the receipt was only 2 days after their wedding, and the seat numbers were side by side. The realization came slowly but painfully. Dalton had arranged a trip with another woman even before he walked down the aisle with Serena. The betrayal tightened around her chest, spreading like fire through her veins. Every moment she remembered suddenly felt staged, as if Dalton had played a role so convincingly that she never doubted him. She spent the night sitting by the open window, listening to the ocean waves crashing against the shore. Her thoughts spiraled between disbelief and anger. She remembered Dalton's private calls, his sudden business trips, and the unfamiliar bracelet. The pieces fell into place like shards of glass, cutting her each time a new truth emerged. On the seventh day, Dalton announced he needed to travel to the city for urgent business. Serena watched him pack, noticing how effortlessly he lied. When he left, she felt an icy stillness settle inside her. Instead of breaking down, she began to think, slowly, methodically, with clarity sharpened by betrayal. She searched the villa, determined to uncover everything. Inside Dalton's luggage, she found a phone she had never seen before. It was hidden between folded shirts, carefully placed to avoid detection. Her hands trembled as she turned it on. and found messages, photos, hotel bookings, and private exchanges between Dalton and Lyria. They had been together long before the wedding. Their plans for the future were discussed openly, with no hesitation. Dalton had promised Lyria travel, financial security, and the life outside the Philippines. She read every message, her heart numbing with each passing minute. She saw Dalton smiling in ways she thought were reserved for her. She saw Lyria posing with expensive gifts he had bought. She learned they had celebrated anniversaries while he pretended to be committed to Serena. The weight of betrayal became suffocating. It had been 9 days since she became Dalton's wife. 9 days since she believed she had found stability. 9 days since she trusted him with everything she had. Now she understood that Dalton had used her. Their marriage was not love. It was a cover, a convenience, a stepping stone in a plan she was never meant to benefit from. Something cold and sharp awakened inside her. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was resolve. Serena looked at the phone one more time before placing it carefully into her bag. She stood in the silent villa with a new clarity solidifying inside her. Dalton had destroyed her trust, her dignity, and the future she envisioned. But she refused to remain the broken one. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to confront him. She wasn't going to ask questions. She had already found her answers. As the waves continued their steady rhythm outside, Serena made a decision that would change everything. A plan formed in her mind, precise, controlled, and irreversible. Nothing in her life would ever return to the innocence it once held. And neither would Dalton's. Serena left the island the same way she had always handled pain, quietly, without drawing attention. She packed a small bag with only essentials and took the hidden phone with her. The wind outside the villa carried a strange heaviness, as if it sensed the shift inside her. She walked toward the small dock not far from the resort, keeping her expression neutral so no one would question her. The ocean, once a source of calm, now felt like a witness to the betrayal she could no longer unsee. Serena boarded a local ferry bound for the mainland, sitting near the back where the shadows made her harder to notice. As the boat drifted away from the island, she stared at the horizon, her mind replaying the messages she had read the night before. Lyria Calden. The name repeated itself in her head like a pulse. She remembered the photographs. Lyria smiling beside Dalton in restaurants, on balconies, in expensive-looking rooms Serena never knew existed. She remembered the trips they planned together, the affectionate messages, the way Dalton described Lyria as if she was the center of his world. Each detail cut deeper than the last. Serena had lived her life believing loyalty meant everything. Dalton had treated it like nothing. When the ferry docked on the mainland, Serena blended into the crowd of travelers rushing to taxis and buses. She moved with quiet determination, slipping away from the noisy terminal and toward the smaller streets where fewer people noticed strangers. She checked Dalton's hidden phone every few minutes, watching the blue location dot move slowly across the Manila map. He was still there, still at Lyria's condo. He had not returned to the villa, not even to check on his wife. His neglect confirmed everything Serena needed to know. The travel to Manila took hours, but Serena remained steady. She kept her bag close and her mind focused, planning each step with meticulous care. The closer she got to the city, the more her emotions solidified into something controlled, almost cold. She felt neither panic nor despair, only a deep, unwavering determination to confront the truth with her own eyes. Manila greeted her with its usual chaos, honking cars, flashing lights, and crowds that move like restless waves. Serena had visited the city before, but never with a purpose like this. She took a taxi toward the district where Lyria lived, watching the buildings rise and roads narrow as she approached the condo complex labeled Arcadia Towers. Dalton had spent countless nights here, sneaking away from her under the excuse of business. Serena stepped out a block away, choosing to walk the rest of the distance. She needed time to observe, to understand the environment. The building was tall, modern, and surrounded by security guards who checked every person entering. The glass doors reflected her image back at her. Calm face, steady eyes, nothing out of place. She kept walking past the entrance and noted every detail. The guard locations, the delivery schedules, the blind spots in their line of sight. The information settled into her mind like pieces of a puzzle. She found a small lodging house 2 streets away, the kind that asked for cash and didn't care about full names. She checked into a room with a window overlooking the road leading to the condo. From there, she could watch without being seen. She spent the afternoon reviewing everything on the hidden phone. The messages between Dalton and Lyria were recent. They had plans for dinner. They had discussed travel to Malaysia. Lyria had sent photos only hours earlier, waiting for Dalton to come back after his supposed business meeting. As evening settled in, the streets outside grew busier. Neon signs flickered to life, street vendors pushed carts along the sidewalks, and people hurried past carrying bags and briefcases. Serena remained indoors, lights off, watching from behind thin curtains. Around 7 p.m., she saw him. Dalton stepped out of a taxi in the same casual clothes he had worn earlier that morning before leaving the villa. He did not look tired. He did not look conflicted. He smiled as he walked into the building, as if he had just finished a pleasant day. Serena's breath tightened, but her expression did not change. She felt the final confirmation of what she had already known. Dalton had built an entire life behind her. He didn't hesitate. He didn't hide. He went to Lyria openly, confidently, as if Serena meant nothing. She watched him disappear inside. A moment later, her phone vibrated. She looked down. Dalton had sent her a message on his primary phone, the phone he used with her. He said he might be late because of business matters, but he would return soon. The lie appeared on the screen so casually that Serena felt a strange calm settle over her. He believed she would wait. He believed she would never find out. The thought didn't anger her. It simply made her decision stronger. For the rest of the night, Serena observed the condo. She watched people come and go, noticed the key code Lyria used when she returned with groceries later, and memorized the timing of the security guard's patrol. Every detail mattered. Betrayal had reshaped her into someone sharper, someone who no longer feared consequences. As dawn approached, Serena stepped out of the lodging house and made her way toward Arcadia Towers again. The streets were still dark, save for a few streetlights flickering along the sidewalk. She walked slowly, absorbing every detail, every smell, every sound of the early morning city. She felt an odd sense of calm washing over her, calm born not from peace, but from certainty. Dalton and Lyria slept comfortably in a world built on lies. Serena approached the condo entrance with a steady gait, ready to enter that world, ready to bring it to an irreversible end. Her heart did not race. Her hands did not shake. She had decided, and the decision had become her truth. What happened next would alter everything, but she no longer cared about the life she was leaving behind. She only cared about the truth she walked toward. Serena Mulvera left the police station in a daze, the muffled sounds of investigators echoing behind her as the glass doors closed. The moment she stepped outside, the heavy air of late afternoon clung to her skin, but she barely felt it. She walked without direction, her mind replaying every word Officer Delrin Voss had spoken. Suspicion, motive, lies, Everell means. The pieces were beginning to connect in ways she had never expected, yet nothing made sense in a complete picture. Every answer she uncovered brought twice as many questions. For hours, she wandered through the streets of Manila, passing crowds who seemed to move through life with certainty. Their laughter, their chatter, their sense of normalcy only deepened her sense of isolation. By the time Serena reached the hotel she and Tomas had booked before their ill-fated honeymoon, night had already fallen. The lobby lights glowed softly against the polished floors as she entered, unnoticed by those lounging near the reception desk. She moved straight to the elevators, feeling the weight of exhaustion pulling at her limbs. Inside her room, she stood by the door for several minutes before taking a deep breath and switching on the light. The quiet hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Serena sank onto the edge of the bed, rubbing her hands together as if trying to warm herself. She pulled out the journal she had started keeping after Tomas disappeared. Its pages were already filled with frantic questions, possible timelines, and theories that now felt half-formed. She flipped to a new page and stared at the blank sheet, unable to write a single word. Her thoughts drifted to Tomas, his smile, his promises, his sudden distance, and his shattered betrayal. His disappearance had turned into a violent end, but there was something deeper at play. Everell's presence hung over everything like a shadow. Serena could not forget the hotel receptionist who had sworn she heard Tomas arguing with a woman only hours before his body was found. The description hadn't matched Serena. She could not ignore it any longer. Determined to know who Everell was beyond photographs and whispers, Serena decided she needed to visit the place where Everell had last worked. She left the hotel at dawn, her steps more deliberate now. The streets were waking up, vendors setting up stalls, jeepneys honking, the smell of frying garlic drifting from small eateries. Despite the noise, Serena felt oddly calm, as though the line between fear and purpose had finally solidified. The office building where Everell had once worked stood tall and glassy, an unremarkable corporate structure tucked between busier blocks. She entered the lobby and scanned the directory, recognizing the name of the event company Tomas had mentioned once. She approached the front desk cautiously, expecting resistance. Instead, the receptionist simply pointed her toward a manager's office on the 6th floor. The manager, a meticulous woman named Riona Kelter, listened with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort as Serena explained her connection to Everell. Riona reluctantly shared fragments of Everell's past, her work ethic, her charm, her sudden resignation just weeks before Tomas's death. She mentioned Everell's tendency to keep her personal life hidden, though rumors had swirled about a relationship with a foreigner who funded her expensive tastes. Riona shrugged off the details as workplace gossip, but Serena felt a prick of recognition. There had been unexplained receipts in Tomas's email, gift transfers, hotel bookings, and luxury purchases that Serena had assumed were part of business trips he never spoke much about. Now, she understood they weren't business at all. They were linked to Everell. After leaving the office, Serena walked to a coffee shop nearby and sat near a window, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through Tomas's old emails again. She focused on an unfamiliar address that appeared frequently in the weeks before their wedding, one belonging to an upscale condominium tower. She realized the address matched the building Everell once mentioned in a social media post Serena had glimpsed during her initial search. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, Serena caught a ride to the condominium. The building was sleek and towering, guarded by security staff who monitored every person entering. Serena approached the front desk, her voice calm as she requested information about Everell. Predictably, the guards refused, citing privacy rules. But Serena stayed in the lobby, pretending to wait for a resident, observing people as they came and went. After nearly an hour, a man stepped out of the elevator carrying boxes marked with storage labels. Serena recognized the company logo. Tomas had used the same service for his belongings. The coincidence tightened her chest. She approached him, asking casually if he knew who lived on the upper floors. The man shrugged, but mentioned a recent eviction involving a woman who matched Everell's description. According to him, the incident had been abrupt and messy, with the tenant leaving behind several items the storage crew had been hired to remove. Serena felt her pulse quicken. As she asked where the items were taken, the man gave her the address of the storage facility and went on his way. Serena immediately headed there, hoping, dreading, that she might find something linking Tomas and Everell directly. The storage facility sat on the edge of the city, a sprawling warehouse of numbered units and rolling metal doors. Serena walked past rows of units until she found the one the worker had mentioned. With the help of a manager who sympathized with her situation after hearing the tragedy, she obtained temporary access. Inside the storage unit, dust floated in the morning light. Boxes lay stacked haphazardly, some partially opened. Serena sifted through them carefully, her breath catching each time she found something that hinted at a shared life Tomas had never told her about. Photographs of Everell dressed lavishly, receipts for jewelry, vacation itineraries with dates that overlapped moments Tomas had claimed to be traveling for business. Then she found a locked metal case at the bottom of a stack. With the manager's assistance, she pried it open. Inside was a folder filled with printed emails, letters, and bank statements. They documented a financial arrangement between Tomas and Everell. Money transfers, promises of support, and evidence of a cold exchange that suggested their relationship had soured weeks before his wedding to Serena. One email in particular chilled Serena. It was from Everell to Tomas, threatening to expose him if he cut ties with her after the wedding. Next to the folder lay a memory card. Serena pocketed it, unsure of its contents, but sensing it held something significant. Leaving the facility, she returned to her hotel with a racing heart, ready to view what was stored on the card. Her laptop flickered as she inserted the memory card. Dozens of video files appeared. She opened the most recent one, and the screen displayed Tomas in a dimly lit room, pacing angrily. Then the camera shifted, revealing Everell entering the frame. Their tense body language needed no words to convey the escalating conflict. Though there was no audio, their expressions, rage, fear, desperation, painted a chilling picture. The final seconds of the video showed Tomas reaching for something out of frame, Everell stepping back, her face twisted in panic. The recording ended abruptly. Serena stared at the screen, feeling a cold wave wash over her. She knew that Tomas and Everell's relationship had been collapsing at the time of the wedding. What she didn't know was who recorded the footage and why it had been hidden. Her eyes drifted to another video file labeled with the date just 2 days before Tomas's death. When she opened it, the footage showed Everell alone, speaking into the camera in a low, frightened tone. Though the audio remained silent, her expressions revealed fear sharper than anything Serena had seen in the earlier video. She held a piece of paper toward the camera, a handwritten note. Serena paused the video and zoomed in as much as she could. The words were faint, but one name stood out clearly: Marcos Ventrell. Serena had never heard the name, but as she searched online, it didn't take long to discover that Marcos was linked to a small criminal group known for extortion and blackmail schemes involving rich men. The realization struck her like a blow. Tomas wasn't just unfaithful. He had become entangled with dangerous people who might have pushed him, Everell, or both into a deadly chain of events. Serena closed her laptop slowly, her hands trembling. The truth was expanding beyond jealousy, betrayal, or revenge. Something organized, something brutal had been lurking underneath the surface. She understood now that the story wasn't just about a cheating husband or a mistress he tried to leave behind. It was about people who knew how to manipulate fear, loyalty, and money until those trapped inside had no way out. Serena felt herself standing on the edge of a revelation, one that could either destroy her completely or finally reveal what had been hidden all along. The deeper she followed the trail, the clearer it became that this wasn't simply a tragedy born of betrayal. It was a deadly game involving more players than she had ever imagined. Serena Malvera woke the next morning with an ache behind her eyes, the kind that came from too many hours spent in fear and too little spent in rest. Her sleep had been shaped by fragments of memory card footage looping in her mind, Tomas pacing with anger, Everell standing in fear, and that one name glowing on the blurred paper like a warning from the shadows. Marcos Ventral. Whoever he was, he had clearly become entangled in the lives of Tomas and Everell at a time when everything was spiraling toward disaster. Serena sensed that this man was not simply a witness or a casual acquaintance. He was a catalyst. As sunlight seeped through the curtains, she sat upright and immediately reached for her laptop. She searched everything she could find on Marcos. His name appeared in scattered articles across the internet. Fraud investigations, rumors of extortion rings operating in the nightlife districts of Manila, and unconfirmed connections to an even wider network of financial schemes. He was the kind of person who thrived in the cracks of society, slipping in and out before anyone could drag him into the light. The more Serena discovered, the colder her skin felt. This man had influence, connections, and an ability to disappear. Yet, for all his power, he had one flaw. He left behind scared people. Everell's recorded fear was real. The way she held that paper toward the camera wasn't an act of manipulation. It had been a desperate attempt to document something before it was too late. Serena knew she couldn't go to the police yet. She had learned quickly that even the smallest misstep could push an investigation in the wrong direction. She needed more information, something undeniable, and she knew exactly where to start. The videos clearly showed that Tomas and Everell had met repeatedly in private rooms, hotel rooms, rental apartments, and a few dim locations that looked like abandoned warehouses. Serena realized she could trace the addresses by identifying objects in the background, logos on the walls, and glimpses of streets through windows. It would take time, but it could lead her directly to the last locations where Tomas and Everell had crossed paths. She spent hours comparing the backgrounds of each video. Finally, one detail stood out: a distinctive mosaic tile wall behind Tomas in one of the recordings, a pattern she recognized from a boutique hotel located in a quieter part of the city. She had stayed near the area once with her family years ago. The pattern was unique enough to be unmistakable. Serena left the hotel immediately, traveling by cab to the district. The boutique hotel still stood proudly, its small cafe filled with travelers. She entered cautiously, heading toward the concierge desk. Instead of asking questions that might draw suspicion, she wandered to the side corridor where guest lists for event spaces were displayed. There, she found a name she had hoped not to recognize: Everell Mays. She had booked the meeting room twice in the month before Tomas's death. Following a hunch, she requested access to the room as a potential renter. The hotel staff, friendly and unaware of her intentions, allowed her to view it. Serena stepped inside and froze. The room was nearly identical to the one in the video, down to the arrangement of furniture. Her pulse quickened. Now she knew these meetings didn't happen randomly or accidentally. They were planned here, away from eyes and ears. She moved to the window and looked outside. From this angle, she recognized the billboard seen faintly in one of the recordings. Her mind began fitting the pieces together. If she could place Tomas and Everell in this room often enough, she might uncover a witness or a detail overlooked by investigators. Serena was about to leave when something caught her eye. Someone had etched tiny markings into the wooden edge of the desk. She leaned closer. They formed a sequence of numbers, a date. She recognized it immediately. It was 3 days before Tomas's body was found. The markings were faint but deliberate. Someone had scratched them there intentionally. Serena didn't know if it was Tomas or Everell, but the timing was too precise to be meaningless. She photographed the numbers and stepped out of the room, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. As she exited the hotel, she noticed a man across the street leaning against the lamppost, smoking. He wasn't dressed like a tourist, and his eyes followed her with unsettling focus. Serena quickened her pace, pretending not to notice, but every instinct told her she was being watched. When she turned the corner, she glanced back. The man had begun walking in the same direction. A tremor of fear erupted in her stomach. She ducked into a crowded marketplace, weaving between stalls until she was sure she had lost him. Only then did she slow down. This wasn't paranoia. Someone really was monitoring her movements. The videos, the storage unit, the hotel visit, they hadn't gone unnoticed. If she had found traces of a criminal network, that network had clearly found traces of her. Serena returned to her hotel and immediately packed her belongings. She changed locations, booking a modest room in a less recognizable part of Manila. There, she finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. But rest wasn't an option. She needed to follow the trail further. She returned to the videos on the memory card, focusing on objects she had previously overlooked. A logo on a wall in the background of one clip matched an abandoned bar she had stumbled across in her earlier searches. An old establishment no longer in business after reports of violent incidents with the owner. Serena remembered the name of the bar, the Lattice Room. It was located in the outskirts, far from the busy parts of the city. She didn't know what she expected to find there, but she knew she had to visit the place. Each location in the videos held part of the story, and this one felt different, darker, more tied to danger. The ride there took nearly an hour. The building appeared exactly as she had expected, boarded windows, a faded sign, and graffiti covering the walls. The entire place radiated a sense of abandonment. But Serena felt drawn to it, sensing it held answers others had chosen to forget. She circled around the back where a side door hung loosely from the hinges. Inside, dust coated every surface. Broken stools and shattered bottles lay scattered across the floor. The air smelled of mold and decay. Serena moved through carefully, observing the marks on walls that suggested this place had seen more than just rowdy nightlife. Then she found something unexpected, a metal box tucked behind the bar counter. It was heavier than she anticipated and covered in grime. She carried it to a patch of sunlight streaming through a broken window and pried it open using a piece of metal she found on the floor. Inside were documents, contracts, ledgers, and lists of names. Her breath hitched when she saw the name she feared most, Marcos Ventral. Below his name were several entries marked with dates, payment amounts, and initials. She scanned until her eyes froze on 2 initials she recognized with painful clarity, T.M., Tomas Malvera. Her husband had been paying regularly. The amounts were large, far larger than she imagined he could afford. But then she found a second set of initials, E.M., Everell Mays. Both were listed under the same ledger sheet, tied to the same dates. One section, dated shortly before the wedding, was marked with the red notation, escalation required, and the date matched the one scratched into the desk at the boutique hotel. Serena felt the truth closing in like a tightening net. Tomas and Everell weren't simply involved in an affair. They had been trapped by someone far more dangerous than either one of them had anticipated. For the first time since this nightmare began, Serena realized the possibility that neither Tomas nor Everell wanted the situation to end violently. They had both been cornered. It was no longer just a love triangle or a revenge plot. It was a chain of events orchestrated by people who benefited from chaos. Serena finally understood one crucial thing. She was no longer searching for the truth about 2 lovers who died in a moment of passion or betrayal. She was searching for the truth about a network that manipulated lives, controlled them with threats, and silenced anyone who became inconvenient. And she was now entangled in it herself. Serena Malvera sat in the dim hotel room with the documents spread across the bed in front of her. The ceiling fan spun lazily above her, clicking each time it completed a rotation. The noise should have been comforting, a reminder of normalcy, but instead it only intensified the dread simmering inside her. Every paper, every date, every transaction she had uncovered made the situation clearer and far more dangerous. Tomas and Everell had not been acting alone. Someone else had been controlling the entire trajectory of their final weeks. She stared at the ledger page marked with the words, "Escalation required," the handwriting jagged, rushed, and aggressive. It was dated 3 days before Tomas was found dead. She had already photographed everything, but she felt compelled to study the originals again, as if the paper itself might reveal emotions hidden in the ink. She needed to understand what escalation meant. In the world of men like Marcos Ventrell, escalation never meant negotiation or compromise. It meant consequences. It meant violence. As she continued analyzing the documents, she noticed another detail she previously overlooked: small check marks next to certain dates. There were 7 in total, spaced irregularly. Next to the 6th check mark, someone had written the initials WN. She didn't recognize them. Yet the same initials appeared at the bottom of a list titled Field Enforcers. Her stomach tightened. Someone had been assigned to monitor the situation as it spiraled. Someone had been ensuring Tomas and Everell followed instructions or paid the price. Serena leaned back and closed her eyes, letting the weight of the discovery settle in. Her husband had been trapped, manipulated, and cornered. His affair with Everell was only one layer of a larger, darker manipulation. The empty spaces in the documents, missing details, redacted sections, torn corners, hinted at a structure much larger than a simple extortion scheme. This was an operation built on control, fear, and the absolute destruction of those who stepped out of line. But one question continued to pound in Serena's mind. If Tomas and Everell were both being manipulated, who had decided they needed to die? And why had both their bodies been left in ways that framed their deaths as a crime of passion? She stood, unable to remain still any longer, pacing the small room in circles. Each step sparked another memory: Tomas staying out late, Everell's sudden disappearance from her job, the man who followed Serena after the boutique hotel visit, and the unmistakable footsteps inside the lattice room. Nothing was accidental. Nothing was coincidental. As she paced, she picked up her phone and dialed Officer Delarin Voss, her voice wavering as she asked to meet discreetly. The officer agreed to meet her at a quiet, seldom-used government building lot later that day. Serena hung up and began carefully storing the documents in her bag. She knew that sharing them could expose corruption or complicity, but she also knew she couldn't keep this information to herself any longer. If Marcos Ventrell had people watching her, she needed someone else to know the truth in case she disappeared. Before leaving the hotel, she checked the hallway through the peer hole. It was empty. She stepped out slowly and made her way downstairs. The lobby was calm. A tourist couple chatted with the front desk worker. A young man typed on his laptop. Everything seemed normal. Still, she kept her eyes down, moving quickly. Outside, she took a long route through several streets before boarding a jeepney heading toward the meeting location. The wind whipping through the open vehicle calmed her somewhat. It made her feel free, if only temporarily. She watched the city blur past. Market stalls, crowded sidewalks, old buildings leaning slightly, children playing in alleyways. Despite her growing fear, she felt an unexpected determination building inside her. She would see this to the end. When she reached the meeting point, Officer Voss was already there, leaning against her patrol motorcycle in the shade of a concrete overhang. Serena approached cautiously, scanning the surroundings. The officer's eyes narrowed slightly as Serena handed her the folder of documents. Voss flipped through them, her expression shifting from curiosity to alarm. Serena stood silently, allowing the officer to process the significance. Voss asked no questions at first. Instead, she locked the documents in her patrol bag and motioned for Serena to follow her behind a row of parked vehicles out of sight. Serena felt her pulse quicken. The officer's urgency hinted at something larger than perhaps even Serena had realized. Voss explained quietly that Marcos Ventrell had been on a watch list for years, suspected of running a shadow network that preyed on financial vulnerability and personal desperation. But no solid evidence had ever been gathered, and witnesses had vanished before charges could be filed. When Serena mentioned the man who followed her, Voss's expression hardened. She advised Serena to leave Manila immediately and stay somewhere rural or familiar. Serena hesitated. She wasn't afraid for her own life as much as she feared leaving the truth buried. But the officer insisted. Voss promised to study the documents and open an internal investigation. Yet Serena sensed an unspoken fear beneath her words. Fear that the network reached deeper than official channels. As Serena walked away, her thoughts churned. Running felt like retreating, but staying felt suicidal. Still, she had no choice but to leave the city for now. She returned to the hotel to collect her belongings, taking another indirect route to ensure she wasn't being followed. Every sound, every honking vehicle, every shifting shadow felt amplified. Inside her room, she zipped up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. Moments before she left, her phone vibrated. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Her breath hitched. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned off the phone and removed the SIM card, hiding it under the mattress. Serena exited the hotel and headed for the bus terminal. She planned to return to her hometown, where familiarity might offer some safety. The bus ride was long, the windows foggy from humidity. She sat near the back, watching the city shrink behind her as miles of palm trees, rice fields, and modest homes replaced the chaos of Manila. By the time she reached her hometown, the sky was darkening. Serena walked along the narrow streets lit by soft yellow lamps, the smell of the sea drifting in from the shore. Memories of her childhood tugged at her heart. The simplicity of life before Tomas, before lies, before danger. She sought refuge in her parents' empty house, which had been left to her after their passing. The familiar creak of the wooden door brought unexpected comfort. Inside, she turned on a single light and sat alone in the quiet. She had come full circle, back to where her life began, while trying to untangle where Tomas's life ended. She placed her bag on the table and pulled out the last item she hadn't examined closely yet, the memory card she had retrieved from the storage facility. She had seen some videos, but not all. There were dozens of them. Some she had avoided because the earlier ones had been overwhelming. Now she inserted the card into her laptop again. She opened a file labeled with the date 1 day before Tomas's death. The screen filled with grainy footage of Tomas sitting alone in a dark room, his posture hunched, his face buried in his hands. Serena felt her heart tighten. Then the door behind him opened, and another figure entered. Female, confident, familiar. It was Everell. But this time, she wasn't frightened. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't desperate. Her expression was cold, calculated. Her movements were controlled, deliberate. She approached Tomas and placed something on the table between them. Tomas looked up, startled. He hesitated, then leaned forward to examine whatever she had brought. Serena couldn't see what it was, but Tomas's reaction was immediate, pure shock, even horror. The video ended abruptly. Serena sat frozen. This version of Everell was different from the woman who appeared terrified in earlier footage. Which one was real? Or had she been playing both Tomas and Marcos? She clicked on another video. This one was shorter, a grainy security camera clip showing a parking lot at night. A man stepped into the frame, tall, wearing a hooded jacket. He approached a parked car. Inside the vehicle sat Tomas. The man tapped on the window. Tomas hesitated before rolling it down. When he did, the man pulled something from his pocket. Serena's breath caught when she recognized the face illuminated briefly by the overhead light. Marcos Ventrell. The clip ended there, offering no conclusion, no explanation, just a moment frozen in time, weighted with implication. Serena leaned back, trembling. She understood now that both Tomas and Everell had reached a breaking point the days before the deaths. Someone had been pulling strings. Someone had orchestrated the final moves. Someone had turned fear into leverage, lies into tools, and love into a weapon.